following the outcome of the Mueller investigation into Russian collusion, we learned that Donald Trump and his campaign did not collude with Russia during the election. Now, following the release of that report, Donald Trump, of course, took a victory lap.
After a long investigation, after so many people have been so badly hurt, after not looking at the other side, where a lot of bad things happened, a lot of horrible things happened, a lot of very bad things happened for our country. It was just announced there was no collusion with Russia, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction and none whatsoever. And it was a complete and total exoneration. It's a shame that our country had to go through this. To be honest, it's a shame that your president has had to go through this before I even got elected. It began. And it began illegally. And hopefully somebody's going to look at the other side. This was an illegal takedown that failed.
All right, I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, you might be seeing Donald Trump. I'm seeing Leon Lett. So you keep high stepping. Let's see how it turns out. He now let's correct the things that he said that are false, as usual. He said it's a complete and total exoneration. Not true.
Right.
It's an exoneration of him colluding with the Russians during the election. It does not exonerate any of his other crimes, and it does not exonerate any connections that he has with the Russians overall, including the business dealings he had with them before and the meetings he has had with them after the election. So it's not remotely true that it's a complete and total exoneration.
And Attorney General William Barr also noted in his summary of the investigation that Mueller's report does not exonerate Donald Trump. So that is the wording of his own Attorney General William Barr. Just want to make a note of that.
In regards to obstruction of justice.
Right.
And then one more comment on this. He said this was an illegal takedown. You know, if this was an illegal takedown of Donald Trump and it was a witch hunt, as he has said, what, 100 times or 1,000 times? Why didn't Mueller just say he was guilty? What kind of a witch hunt at the end says, hey, by the way, the witch is innocent? That doesn't make any sense at all. So is Donald Trump ever going to be held accountable for his conspiracy theories that, remember Mueller and the 19 angry Democrats and how they were out to get him?
No,
so apparently they weren't out to get you.
Yeah.
Okay, so which one is it? Was it a witch hunt or a complete and total exoneration?
Well, he is now slowly but surely changing his rhetoric toward Mueller because, of course, his camp is advising him that maybe don't discredit Mueller anymore because this report came out exactly the way that you wanted it to come out. So you need to now build up Mueller's credibility rather than tearing him down.
So, but can we all agree, MAGA guys, can you agree that it was not a witch hunt? That Obama did not set up FEMA camps? You were wrong and borderline lunatic with that conspiracy theory. That the UN never forced us into Hobbit homes. You were wrong about that. And then you were wrong that there was 19 angry Democrats and Mueller who were going to do a witch hunt of Donald Trump. You were 100% wrong about that. Can you admit that? No, you'll never admit it, right? Because you don't care about facts.
Now, there are further investigations into Donald Trump, including some of his alleged financial crimes. And so the Democrats in Congress are looking into that, including prosecutors out of New York. And I'm gonna give you the details in that just a second. But first, let's hear from Representative Katie Hill. She is the vice chair of the House Oversight Committee.
Now we have to say, okay, fine. He didn't directly coordinate with Russia moving forward, but now we have evidence over the last 2 years that the Mueller investigation was not covering that is highly, highly suspicious, both on the influence by foreign entities that have directly had part with our foreign policy, but also on so many other things. For example, on oversight, we're not even dealing with that. We're dealing with the security clearances issue. We're dealing with possibly giving nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. We're dealing with The fact that we've got 30,000. We've got thousands of children that haven't been reunited with their families, and it's so many issues that we've got to continue our investigations on, and it's just not related to the Mueller report. It's time that we continue our focus on the issues that matter, but also continue our investigations of holding the president accountable for what he has done over the past 2 years since taking office.
So, look, I think that there are important issues to look into. I got to be honest, I didn't love Representative Hill's summary of those investigations. It seemed as though she was touching on pretty much anything and everything Trump has ever done, including some of his policies at the border. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. You need to be hyper-focused on these alleged financial crimes, and Democrats have not had a good history of doing that. They've been so focused on Russian collusion that I think that they have ruined the perspective or the perception of much more important investigations into what influences Trump and what type of financial ties he has to foreign governments. Now, let me give you the details on some of the investigations that are ongoing. Federal prosecutors from the Southern District of New York have been working parallel to the special counsel's team. A primary subject of their investigation is the hush money paid to porn star Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal to keep the women quiet about their alleged sexual affairs with Trump. That investigation is ongoing, and I do argue that that is an important investigation that we have that has much more credibility than other things that Trump has been looked into for.
So that's a clear felony. Michael Cohen is going to jail for that felony. His co-conspirator was Donald Trump. They not only have Cohen's testimony on that, but they also have American Media Incorporated, that is the parent company of National Enquirer, cooperating with prosecutors. They also have Michael Cohen's testimony, potentially Alan Weisselberg's testimony, the CFO. We haven't yet heard from him, but he appears to be corroborating all of this. And they have checks, so they literally have receipts in this case. So he definitely committed that felony. Now, whether anybody's gonna do anything about that is a good and open question. So you hear people screaming that Trump has been totally exonerated on all crimes. That is totally false, 100% false.
Also, there are investigations into Trump's ties with Deutsche Bank. That was a story that we recently covered. A New York State Attorney General investigation is looking into Trump's dealings with Deutsche Bank, including his failed 2014 attempt to buy the Buffalo Bills football team. Deutsche Bank has loaned Trump at least $2 billion over recent decades, despite other banks cutting him off for his financial instability. An investigative report by the New York Times also found that while Trump was trying to secure loans from Deutsche Bank, he would inflate his assets in order to obtain those loans. At the same time, there is some evidence indicating that he would then turn around and deflate the value of his assets when it came to his tax filings. Those are very serious financial crimes that luckily he is being looked into. This was not the subject of Mueller's investigation. Again, Mueller's investigation was very narrow in scope. It focused primarily and actually only on possible Russian collusion during the campaign.
So on the Deutsche Bank issues, don't get it wrong. Him getting $2 billion in loans is not criminal. That's not the issue. The issue is, did he lie in getting those loans? And if you say, hey, Cenk, look, he lied if he did, he lied a long time ago, and that's water under the bridge. What are you guys dredging that up for? Let me ask you something. If you lied in a loan application to the bank, do you think they'd prosecute you? Oh, hell yes, they would. They'd throw the book at you. And if you then turn around and then reported lower numbers on your taxes, that's both a financial fraud and tax fraud. You think they'd be like, oh, well, hey, Bob, you did it a couple of years ago. Don't sweat it, man. No, they throw the book at you. So they should look into those crimes and see, or look into those issues and see if there are crimes and if you're past the statute of limitations or not. And if it turns out maybe there were crimes, but you're past the statute of limitations, then he might get away with that too. Or what I'm most worried about is, Deutsche Bank ran something called, not inside at the bank, but by investigators, called a global laundromat, where they washed a lot of money laundering. So if that is connected, and my guess is that's why Donald Trump kept screaming witch hunt, because if he didn't do the collusion in the election, which we now think he didn't, right? Why did he keep screaming witch hunt and saying like these guys are. Why did he fire James Comey to cover up the investigation? Why was he ranting and raving about the Attorney General recusing himself in trying to what it appeared to be doing a cover up? That video we showed you earlier, it looked like Trump going, how did I get this lucky that they didn't look at Deutsche Bank? They didn't look at my tax returns. They didn't look at my business dealings with the Russians. They're crazy not to look at that. That's where the mother lode was. That's why I was flipping out. Yeah. So that's why he's doing his victory lap. But he should hold on that victory lap. That's why I'm calling him Leon Lett. Let's see what Don Beebe's got in store.
So other investigations include Trump using his own charitable foundation to enrich himself. Also, federal investigators have had their eye on Trump's inauguration committee for potentially committing illegal acts such as fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, and a host of other crimes. The inauguration raised an unprecedented $107 million and spent exorbitant amount on expenses such as makeup and rooms in the Trump International Hotel. So that's another, in my opinion, smaller investigation that's currently taking place. But again, I just want to go back to the main point of all of the other non-Mueller investigations. It has to do with the potential financial crimes. It has to do with Trump using the office of the president to enrich himself. It has to do with financial conflicts of interest. These are things that have been problematic since the beginning of his presidency. And I think that the Democratic Party has done a disservice to the American people by not amplifying messaging about this and instead only talking about Russian collusion over and over again and focusing specifically on that and that alone.
So the Pelosi mistake here, and now of course mainstream media is writing up about how Pelosi was a genius for not pursuing impeachment. No, exact opposite. Instead, Pelosi and the rest of the Democratic leadership kept saying, wait till you see the Mueller report. But we were like, hey, wait a minute though. The campaign finance violation is a clear felony. Why don't you pursue that now? You don't need the Mueller report for that. And the Mueller report isn't going to say anything about that because it's not about that issue. Oh, wait till you see the Mueller report. And they put all their eggs in that basket. And look at what happened. We told you to look at the actual criminal violations we already knew. The Mueller report was whether there was going to be additional crimes on top of that. Lastly, look guys, you've now heard me say this a couple of times. You've been watching the whole show today. It's not just other crimes not related to Russia. He clearly could have, and I'm not saying that I have the evidence that no one else does. All I'm telling you is what I've been saying for the last 2 years, which is out in the open. He could have committed crimes with the Russians, including money laundering, having nothing to do with the election. And so now it would affect what he does in the office of the presidency because the Russians can then call in those favors. So 63 different Russian billionaires have given Donald Trump, have bought from Trump Tower and other Trump properties just in Florida, okay? Those are oligarchs moving their money out of the country. At one point, Trump Tower is about to go bankrupt. Russian oligarchs come in and buy a third of it, rescuing Donald Trump. One of his sons says, oh, we get all of our money from the Russians because they love to play golf. Okay, so those things still exist. They definitely got money from the Russians. And if you think that those are legitimate loans, that, oh, hey, of course, that was Russian oligarchs and Donald Trump bought all those properties and circulated that money and it was all clean. How do you, really? That looks like telltale money laundering. I'm not saying that I have the evidence. I'm saying that somebody should investigate that based on the publicly available evidence that we'd all see with our eyes. If you say that doesn't look fishy, that's weird. Why would you say that it doesn't look fishy when it clearly does, unless you have a political agenda? It's not to say that we're gonna convict Donald Trump tomorrow. It's not to say that he should or shouldn't be president. But if you look at all that and go, no, I don't see anything there, you're trying super hard not to see it. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.